Hello and welcome to Cloud Learner's Journey Part 6 of Azure Solutions Architect Real Exam Questions and Answers with Explanation. You can also find reference links in the description. To become an Azure Solutions Architect, you must pass AZ-104 and AZ-305 exam. You can also go through AZ-104 exam video series and links are available in the description. If you like the video, please like, share, comment and subscribe to our Cloud Learner's Journey channel to help you pass AZ-305 exam and become an Azure Solutions Architect. Question number 1. You have an Azure subscription. Your on-premises network contains a file server named Server 1. Server 1 stores 5 TB of company files that are accessed rarely. You plan to copy the files to Azure storage. You need to implement a storage solution for the files that meet the following requirements. First requirement, the files must be available within 24 hours of being requested. Second requirement, storage costs must be minimized. Which two possible solutions achieve this goal? And the options are A. Create an Azure Blob storage account that is configured for the cool default access tier. Create a blob container, copy the files to the blob container and set each file to the archive access tier. B. Create a general purpose V1 storage account. Create a blob container and copy the files to the blob container. C. Create a general purpose V2 storage account that is configured for the cool default access tier. Create a file share in the storage account and copy the files to the file share. D. Create a general purpose V2 storage account that is configured for the hot default access tier. Create a blob container, copy the files to the blob container and set each files to the archive access tier. E. Create the general purpose V1 storage account, create a file share in the storage account and copy the files to the file share. Correct options are A. Create an Azure Blob storage account that is configured for the cool default access tier. Create a blob container, copy the files to the blob container and set each file to the archive access tier. D. Create a general purpose V2 storage account that is configured for the hot default access tier. Create a blob container, copy the files to the blob container and set each file to the archive access tier. To minimize costs, archive tier is optimized for storing data that is rarely accessed and stored for at least 180 days with flexible latency requirements. Next, question number 2. You plan to migrate on-premises MySQL database to Azure database for MySQL Flexible Server. You need to recommend a solution for the Azure database for MySQL Flexible Server configuration. The solution must meet the following requirements. First requirement, the databases must be accessible if a data center fails. Second requirement, cost must be minimized. Which compute tier should you recommend? And the options are A. Burstable, B. General purpose, C. Memory optimized. And the correct option is B. General purpose. The flexible server service is available in 3 SKU tiers: burstable, general purpose and business critical. High availability isn't supported in the burstable computer tier. So the general purpose is better suited, which requires high availability, scale and predictable performance. Next, question number 3. You have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1 that is linked to a hybrid Azure Active Directory tenant. You have an on-premises data center that doesn't have a VPN connection to Subscription 1. The data center contains a computer named Server 1 that has Microsoft SQL Server 2016 installed. Server is prevented from accessing the internet. An Azure Logic App resources named Logic App 1 requires write access to a database on Server 1. You need to recommend a solution to provide Logic App 1 with the ability to access Server 1. What should you recommend deploying on-premises and in Azure? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. For on-premises, it's an on-premises data gateway. For logic apps in global multi-tenant Azure that connects to an on-premises SQL server, you need to have the on-premises data gateway installed on a local computer and a data gateway resources that's already created in Azure. And for Azure, it's a connection gateway resource. A gateway resource in Azure is for gateway installation to access on-premises data sources. Question number 4. You have an Azure Active Directory tenant named Contester.com that has a security group named Group 1. Group 1 is configured for assigned membership. Group 1 has 50 members, including 20 guest users. You need to recommend a solution for evaluating the membership of Group 1. The solution must meet the following requirements. First requirement, the evaluation must be repeated automatically every 3 months. Second requirement, every member must be able to report whether they need to be in Group 1. Third requirement, users who report that they do not need to be in Group 1 must be removed from Group 1 automatically. Fourth requirement, users who do not report whether they need to be in Group 1 must be removed from Group 1 automatically. What should you include in the recommendation? And the options are A. Implement Azure AD identity protection. B. Change the membership type of group 1 to dynamic user. C. Create an access review. D. Implement Azure AD privileged identity management. And the correct option is C. Create an access review. An access review is an Azure AD feature that enables administrators to review group memberships and application assignments and allow group members to confirm whether they still require access or not. Next, question number 5. Your company deploys several virtual machines on premises and to Azure. ExpressRoute is deployed and configured for on-premises to Azure connectivity. Several virtual machines exhibit network connectivity issues. You need to analyze the network traffic to identify whether packets are being allowed or denied to the virtual machine. And here the solution is use Azure Network Watcher to run IP flow verify to analyze the network traffic. Does this meet the goal? And the options are A, yes, B, no. And the correct option is A, yes. Azure Network Watcher IP Flow Verify, which allows to detect traffic filtering issues at a VM level. IP Flow Verify checks if a packet is allowed or denied to or from a virtual machine. Next, question number 6. It is same as the previous question, but here the solution is different. And the solution is use Azure Advisor to analyze the network traffic. Does this meet the goal? And the options are A, yes, B, no. And the correct option is B, no. Instead, use Azure Network Watcher IP Flow Verify, which allows to detect traffic filtering issues at a VM level. Next, question number 7. The same as the previous two questions, but here the solution is different. And the solution is use Azure Traffic Analytics in Azure Network Watcher to analyze the network traffic. Does this meet the goal? And the options are A, yes, B, no. The correct option is B, no. We have to use Azure Network Watcher IP Flow Verify, which allows to detect the traffic filtering issues. Next, question number 8. You have an Azure subscription that contains a custom application named Application 1. Application was deployed by an external company named Fabricam Limited. Developers at Fabricam were assigned role-based access control permissions to the Application 1 components. All users are licensed for the Microsoft 365 E5 plan. You need to recommend a solution to verify whether the Fabricam developers still require permissions to Application 1. The solution must meet the following requirement. First requirement, to the manager of the developers, send a monthly email message that lists the access permissions to Application 1. Second requirement, if the manager doesn't verify an access permission, automatically revoke that permission. Second requirement, minimize development effort. What should you recommend? And the correct options are A. In Azure Active Directory, create an access review of Application 1. B. Create an Azure automation runbook that runs the get-az role assignment commandlet. C. In Azure Active Directory, privileged identity management, create a custom role assignment for the Application 1 resources. D. Create an Azure automation runbook that runs get-azure AD user app role assignment commandlet. And the correct option is A. In Azure Active Directory, create an access review of Application 1. Access review in Azure Active Directory enables organization to efficiently manage group memberships, access to enterprise applications, and role assignment. Users' access can be reviewed regularly to make sure only the right people have continued access. Next, question number 9. Your company name Contoso Limited implements several Azure Logic Apps that have HTTP triggers. The Logic Apps provides access to on-premises web services. Contoso establishes a partnership with another company named Fabricam. Fabricam doesn't have an existing Azure Active Directory tenant that uses third-party or 2.0 identity management to authenticate its users. Developers at Fabricam plan to use a subset of the Logic Apps to build applications that will integrate with the on-premises web service of Contoso. You need to design a solution to provide the Fabricam developers with access to the Logic Apps. The solution must meet the following requirements. First requirement, requests to the Logic Apps from the developers must be limited to lower rates than the requests from the users at Contoso. The developers must be able to rely on their existing OAuth 2.0 provider to gain access to the Logic Apps. The solution must not require changes to the Logic Apps. Fourth requirement, the solution must not use Azure AD guest accounts. What should you include in the solution? And the options are A. Azure Front Door, B. Azure AD Application Proxy, C. Azure AD Business to Business, D. Azure API Management. And the correct option is D. Azure API Management. Many APIs support OAuth 2.0 to secure the API and ensure that only valid users have access, and they can only access resources to which they are entitled. To use Azure API Management Interactive Developers Console with such APIs, the service allows you to configure your service instance to work with your OAuth 2.0 enabled API. And here the incorrect answers are Azure AD B2B, which uses guest accounts, and Azure AD Application Proxy is for on-premises scenarios. Next, question number 10. You have an Azure subscription that contains a virtual network named VNet1 and 10 virtual machines. The virtual machines are connected to VNet1. You need to design a solution to manage the virtual machines from the internet. The solution must meet the following requirements. First requirement, incoming connections to the virtual machines must be authenticated by using Azure multi-factor authentication before network connectivity is allowed. Second requirement, incoming connections must use TLS and connect to TCP port 443. Third requirement, the solution must support RDP and SSH. What should you include in the solution? To answer, select the appropriate options in the answer area. Answer area, to provide access to virtual machines on VNet1 uses just-in-time VM access. Lock down inbound traffic to your Azure virtual machines with Microsoft Defender for Cloud's just-in-time virtual machine access features. This reduces exposure to attacks while providing easy access when you need to connect to a VM. Second answer area, to ensure Azure MFA use a conditional access policy that has cloud apps assigned set to Azure Windows VM sign-in. You can enforce conditional access policies such as multi-factor authentication or user sign-in risks check before authorizing access to Windows VMs in Azure that are enabled with Azure AD sign-in. Thank you for watching part 6 of Azure Solutions Architect real exam questions and answers. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you liked the video, please like, share, subscribe and comment to our channel for more related topics. We look forward to continuing the journey with you in next videos. Thank you.